and they treat that person like they are invisible, like they don't matter, like they are just background noise in someone else's story. But here's what those people never stop to think about. What if that nobody was never really a nobody at all? What if behind the quiet eyes and the simple clothes and the soft voice, there was a world so powerful, so enormous, that if they had known the truth, they would have dropped to their knees and begged for forgiveness on the spot? This is the story of Elena Whitmore, a woman her husband called ordinary, a woman his family called beneath them, a woman the world overlooked every single day. But Elena had a secret, and when that secret finally came to light in the most unexpected, most dramatic, most jaw-dropping way possible, the man who had humiliated her, who had cheated on her, who had signed her name on divorce papers like she was nothing, that man didn't just lose a wife, he lost everything. Stay with me, because this story, it doesn't just shock you, it will make you believe, truly believe, that life has a way of correcting its own mistakes. To understand how this story ends, you have to understand how it began. And it began very quietly, the way most great storms do, with nothing more than a soft breeze. Elena Whitmore grew up in a small, unremarkable town in the countryside of Vermont. The kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where the biggest news on a Tuesday is that the bakery got a new sign, where life moves slow and time moves slower. Her mother, Margaret, was a school teacher, warm, patient, the kind of woman who remembered every student's birthday and kept extra snacks in her desk drawer for the kids who skipped breakfast. Everyone in town loved Margaret. Her father, well, that's where the story gets complicated. Elena's father, Raymond Chen, was almost never there. He traveled constantly. He was always on a plane, always on a call, always somewhere else. And when people in town asked Margaret what her husband did for work, Margaret would smile gently and say, "He's in business. Nothing more, nothing less." The town assumed he was a traveling salesman maybe, or a mid-level manager who worked long hours for a modest paycheck, because Raymond never showed off. When he came home, which was maybe once or twice a month, he came home in regular clothes, drove an old pickup truck, and spent his time fixing things around the house and fishing by the creek. He didn't talk about money, he didn't talk about deals, he didn't talk about what he built or who he knew or how far his name reached across the world. He was just Dad. And to Elena, that was everything. She adored him. She followed him everywhere during his visits. They'd sit on the porch together at night, watching the stars, and he would tell her stories, not fairy tales, not fantasies, real stories, about perseverance, about patience, about the power of playing your cards at exactly the right moment. "Elena," he used to say, looking at her with those calm, knowing eyes, "the most dangerous person in any room is the one nobody's paying attention to." She didn't fully understand what he meant then. She would understand later, much later. Growing up, Elena was a quiet child, studious, thoughtful. She wasn't the most popular girl in school, but she was respected. She had a kind of inner stillness that some people mistook for shyness, but people who knew her well understood that it was actually something else entirely. It was awareness. Elena noticed everything. She listened when others talked. She watched when others moved. She absorbed the world around her like a sponge, carefully and completely. She went to a good but not famous university. She studied literature and business, an unusual combination that raised a few eyebrows but suited her perfectly. She graduated with honors, moved to New York City, and got herself a mid-level job at a publishing company. She made decent money, she lived in a modest apartment, she cooked her own meals and took the subway to work. She could have had so much more. But you have to understand something crucial about Elena. She chose this life. Her father had offered her the world on a silver platter more times than she could count. a luxury apartment, a high-powered position, access to everything his empire could give her. And every time, Elena said no. "I want to earn my life, Dad," she told him once, sitting across from him at a small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "I don't want people to look at me and see your money. I want them to see me." Raymond had looked at his daughter in that moment with an expression that was equal parts pride and sorrow, because he understood, better than most, that the world she was walking into didn't always reward people for who they were. Sometimes it punished them for what they didn't have. But he respected her choice. He would always respect her choice. And so Elena entered the world without a label, without a title, without any of the armor that wealth provides. She entered it as just a woman, smart, warm, capable, and completely unknown. And that, as it turned out, is exactly how she would eventually meet the man who would try to destroy her. Section 2. When he said, "I love you," and meant something else entirely. Music shifts, slightly warmer, but with underlying tension. His name was Daniel Harrington, and the first time Elena saw him, she thought he was the most beautiful disaster she'd ever encountered. She met him at a colleague's birthday dinner, one of those crowded, loud restaurant gatherings where everyone is talking over everyone else and the food takes 40 minutes to arrive. Daniel was seated 2 chairs down from her, laughing loudly, charming everyone at the table, telling stories that made people lean forward and forget to eat. He had that quality, that magnetic electric quality, where certain people have where a room feels different when they're in it, brighter, more alive, more interesting. He noticed Elena watching him. He caught her eye across the table and smiled. Not a flashy smile, a slow, deliberate one, like he was telling a secret only she could hear. By the end of the evening, he had moved to the seat next to her. By the end of the week, he had called her 3 times. By the end of the month, she was falling. Daniel Harrington came from a wealthy family, not obscenely rich, but comfortable. His father, Gerald Harrington, had built a mid-sized tech company called Harrington Solutions over 30 years of hard work and strategic deals. The company was successful, it was respected, it had several hundred employees and contracts with notable corporate clients across the country. Gerald was proud of it, ferociously proud. Daniel was being groomed to take it over. He worked in the company's business development department, he sat in board meetings, he represented the Harrington name at events and conferences. He wore expensive suits, drove a luxury car, and lived in a beautiful apartment in Manhattan's Upper East Side. He was, by every visible measure, a man going places. And he made Elena feel in those early months like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, right by his side. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Dinners at beautiful restaurants, weekend trips upstate, lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers spread across the floor. He told her she was unlike anyone he'd ever met. He said she had a depth to her that he couldn't find in the world he normally moved in. He said she made him feel real. Elena believed every word. She had no reason not to. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known because love has a way of turning down the volume on warning signs, was that Daniel Harrington had layers she hadn't seen yet, layers that only revealed themselves slowly, like paint peeling off an old wall. The first sign came about 8 months into their relationship. They were at a Harrington family dinner, a formal sit-down affair, at Gerald Harrington's sprawling home in Connecticut. Long table, crystal glasses, the kind of silverware that has been in the family for generations. Elena wore a simple but elegant blue dress. She had her hair down. She looked lovely. But from the moment she walked through the door, she could feel it, the coolness. Gerald Harrington looked at her with polite, distant eyes. His wife, Patricia, smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. Daniel's older sister, Catherine, barely acknowledged her. The conversation around the table flowed past Elena like a river around a stone, politely but firmly, excluding her. They asked about her job. She told them, publishing. They nodded in the way people do when they've mentally already moved on. They asked where she grew up. Vermont, she said. They smiled the way people smile at something quaint and irrelevant. Nobody asked anything else. On the drive home, Elena looked out the window at the passing Connecticut trees and said quietly, "They don't like me, do they?" Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand. "They just need time," he said. "They're protective. It has nothing to do with you personally." But of course it did. It had everything to do with her. Because to the Harrington family, Elena was simply not enough. Not wealthy enough, not connected enough, not the right kind of person for their kind of family. They had always imagined Daniel with someone from their world, a daughter of another business family, someone with a name that meant something in the circles they moved in, a strategic match, a beneficial union. Elena was none of those things. Or so they believed.